we've covered Memphis wrestling history in great detail, but the split between Jarrett and Nick Gulas in 1977 that happened based around Memphis. It was one of the biggest coups and most, I mean, in 6 weeks, Jarrett had won the town and Nick was done, right? But it inadvertently had ripples around the territory in Louisville and Evansville and Lexington and et cetera, because when it elapsed in Memphis that Jerry Jarrett decided he was going to start his own promotion and split from Nick Gulas, and he got Lawler to agree to go with him and the entire crew of talent, and they went to see Channel 5 to see if they could get their television show on the air, and Channel 5 agreed in a heartbeat. The actual time elapsed, a lot of people don't understand, in Memphis was like 7 to 10 days. All that happened in, right? And it was in the newspaper in the Commercial Appeal in Memphis because it was a big story, but it broke, like just a couple of days after Jarrett, found out that Nick had kind of screwed him on ownership and that he had gone to his lawyer and they decided to do this, and he talked to Lawler, and boom, they started making announcements. And within a week and a half, I think the show was pretty much on the air on Channel 5, and Channel 13 canceled Nick's show because he didn't have Lawler. And
that's amazing. That's the amazing part of it.
They didn't want to get in the middle of it. Was their highest rated TV show, but they could sense a lawsuit coming, and they didn't want to get in the middle of it. And they knew that with Lawler and the other, and also Lance gave notice, which is the point of the story I'm about to tell. They pretty much knew that they were on the losing end of this thing, so they just canceled the show, their highest rated show, because their show went away. Nick would have given them a completely different show. Anyway, the moral to the story is what the folks in Louisville and Evansville and Lexington and the other places where the Memphis TV aired up here on a week delay, 7 days later, we didn't know about the change in promotions and about the split and all the stuff that was happening in the newspaper in Memphis over that week, because even the girl that sent me my clippings, I traded her pictures of Lawler and Dundee, and she'd send me the newspaper ads and everything from Memphis and all the stories on wrestling. It had only been a week. She hadn't got them to me yet, right? So I didn't even know anything. We turned on the TV one day here in Louisville, and instead of Lance Russell and Dave Brown, there was Clay Conrad and Bob Young, who were literally, they were a couple like sports guys from the Channel 5, the news station and the associated radio station, etc. And they'd never done wrestling before, and nobody'd ever heard of them. But because Lance Russell had to actually he was the program director at Channel 13. He had to quit that job to go and follow and Jerry had to pay him to do it, to follow the wrestling program, and he had to give a certain amount of weeks notice, so he couldn't do the show. And Dave Brown was the weatherman at Channel 13, and he had to, because Channel 5 in one fell swoop got the top rated TV show, one of the opposition's program directors, the most famous weatherman in town, news personality. They got all this stuff at the same time. But we saw Clay Conrad and Bob Young, and there was Jerry Lawler, there was Rocky Johnson, there was all our favorite stars. But immediately I called Bolin on the phone. Where's Lance and Dave? And we stress and we agonize for the entire, day. Didn't watch the show over how can we watch wrestling without Lance Russell and Dave Brown? Will we be able to go on? It fucking hurt. It was panic. That's what a change in your familiar, friendly, over popular, knowledgeable, and keyword familiar announce duo can do. It changes the feel of the product, and that hurts in some cases. I don't know. I think they're, like you said, Turner Broadcasting this Crockett promotion. And we'll find out what difference Joe Silva made probably pretty soon when he's not going to be around.
Hey, Jim, that raises a question I haven't heard asked too much, which is, Jerry Jarrett was a very ambitious guy, may still be. What would have happened if Nick had backed off and said, all right, don't worry, you don't have to take George in Memphis? Where do you think the partnership, or, what Jerry thought was a partnership, would have gone, for the next couple of years if everything hadn't blown up then?
Oh God, I almost think it would have happened inevitably because those same parts would have still been there. And I think maybe more damage would have been done to the other end of Nick's business, the one that he was directly in control of, instead of the Memphis end that Jarrett was in control of. But eventually probably the same thing would have happened because Jerry would have, just by the fact that of youth, Nick, would have eventually wanted to retire. Jerry would have wanted to own the whole thing. What would have Nick's contribution to it, that his end of the territory, been worth? Probably at that time, not much. So maybe I just hastened things up a little bit. But it's almost like when somebody's quoted as saying, well, he thought I was going to steal his territory, and that was years before I actually stole his territory.